Well, there have been reports and rumors for months that Dave Turl may be in Europe, possibly Portugal. Well, as it turns out, his most recent and last hiding spot was in the suburbs of Rome.
The ghost who pulled strings across continents. A ghost pulling strings across continents. A $250,000 bounty. International manhunt spanning 7 countries. This is the story of how one young criminal outsmarted North America's most feared organization, and how law enforcement finally brought him down. Canada's most wanted man wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was running a criminal empire from luxury villas across Europe. While police scrambled to catch him, he was texting orders that changed everything. How did Dave Turl become the nightmare that even hardened criminals feared? And what did it take to finally stop him? Dave Turl wasn't born a criminal mastermind, but the signs were there early. Growing up in Quebec City's roughest neighborhoods in the late 90s, Turl had no father figure. Police records show something disturbing. While other teenagers worried about school, Turl was already running sophisticated drug operations at 17. One detective who tracked his early crimes wrote in a report, "The level of organization suggests either severe psychological issues or a strategic understanding of terror as a business model." What made Turl truly dangerous wasn't just his willingness to break the rules, it was his intelligence. While other young criminals posted on social media and bragged about their crimes, Turl operated differently. No photos, no social media accounts, not even a driver's license under his real name. He moved like a professional spy, decades before he would need to disappear internationally. By 21, he had assembled a core group of equally disciplined associates. They called themselves the Blood Family Mafia. And they had a plan that most veteran criminals would consider suicide. They were going to challenge the Hells Angels. Not just compete with them, challenge them directly. For anyone familiar with Quebec's criminal landscape, this was unthinkable. The Hells Angels weren't just another gang. They were the supreme authority. They had survived the bloody Quebec biker war of the 1990s that left over 160 people dead. They controlled everything. Everyone paid them tribute. Everyone followed their rules. Everyone except Dave Turl. Turl's organization was different from anything law enforcement had seen before. They didn't meet in traditional locations like clubhouses or bars. Instead, they gathered in random rental properties, communicated through gaming platforms, and left no predictable patterns. They moved with the adaptability of a tech startup, rather than the rigid structure of traditional criminal organizations. A former associate who later cooperated with police described their methods. Turl lived like a ghost before he ever needed to run. He would disappear for days, then return with detailed plans. He was planning for war before anyone knew it was coming. His recruitment strategy was equally unconventional. While established criminal organizations required years of proving loyalty, Turl offered immediate opportunity to young, ambitious criminals. He specifically targeted people with technical skills, computer knowledge, financial expertise, social media manipulation, skills that traditional gangs undervalued. By 25, Turl controlled drug distribution across Quebec City's southern neighborhoods. Most remarkably, he had never been arrested. Not once. His organization recruited exclusively from disillusioned youth who felt excluded from traditional criminal advancement paths. He offered them something the established gangs wouldn't: immediate recognition and profit sharing. Law enforcement was tracking a criminal organization unlike anything they had seen before. While they understood how to monitor traditional gangs with predictable meeting places and hierarchies, the Blood Family Mafia operated like a cloud-based business, decentralized, mobile, adaptable. Detective Marie Bouchard, who spent 3 years tracking Turl's activities, later testified, "We kept looking for them in the places criminals usually go: bars, strip clubs, known hangouts. They weren't there. They were meeting in coffee shops, co-working spaces, even libraries. They blended into legitimate society while planning illegal operations. This invisibility gave them a crucial advantage. While police focused on traditional surveillance targets, Turl's people moved freely through Quebec City, expanding their territory block by block. They weren't flashy. They didn't drive expensive cars or wear expensive jewelry. They looked like college students or young professionals. But beneath this mundane appearance was something law enforcement found deeply concerning: a level of operational discipline that suggested either military training or natural strategic thinking that bordered on genius.
You see a pack of Hell's Angels going by, people are going to want to look. Next thing you know, cars, because they're just staring at us and not paying attention to stop traffic.
If you wanted to break the law on an everyday norm, you should have joined the street gang.
Breaking the unbreakable rule. For decades, one rule governed Quebec's criminal underworld. Everyone paid the Hells Angels their 10% street tax. Everyone. This wasn't just money, it was recognition of power. Since the bloody Quebec biker war of the 1990s, the Angels had maintained absolute control over organized crime in the province. Their dominance was so complete that most criminals simply accepted the tax as an unavoidable cost of doing business. The Angels had killed for far less than what Turl was about to attempt. In February 2023, Dave Turl made a decision that would change everything. He stopped paying, just like that. A street-level dealer who witnessed what happened next told investigators, "No announcement, no negotiation." Turl just gathered his people and told them payments to the Angels were stopping immediately. When someone asked what would happen when they came for their money, he just smiled and said, "Let them try." The significance cannot be overstated. Challenging the Hells Angels wasn't just dangerous, it was considered criminal suicide. The tax wasn't just revenue for the Angels, it was symbolic recognition of their supremacy. By refusing to pay, Turl wasn't just withholding money, he was rejecting the entire power structure of Quebec's criminal hierarchy. It would be like a small business suddenly announcing they won't pay taxes to the government anymore, explained a former organized crime prosecutor. Except, the government doesn't eliminate people for non-compliance. The Angels did. Everyone knew this. Turl knew this. That's what made his stand so shocking. The Angels initially thought it was a mistake. According to intelligence sources, they assumed someone so young couldn't possibly be deliberately provoking them. They sent an enforcer to explain the situation to Turl. That enforcer disappeared. No body was ever found. Days later, an SUV connected to a Hells Angels operation exploded in a controlled detonation. No casualties, just a message. The explosion was precisely timed and executed with professional precision. This wasn't random violence. This was a calculated announcement. The message was clear. This wasn't confusion. This was war. Word spread through Quebec's criminal networks within hours. Phone calls, text messages, encrypted communications. The impossible had happened. Someone had not only refused to pay the Hells Angels, but had retaliated when they sent someone to collect. A criminal intelligence analyst who monitored communications during this period described the reaction. "We intercepted dozens of messages from dealers, bookmakers, even legitimate business owners who paid protection money. Everyone was asking the same question. Is this real? Did someone actually stand up to the Angels?" What happened next shocked law enforcement, even more than Turl's initial defiance. Other criminals began questioning why they were still paying the Angels when Turl's organization wasn't. The rebellion was spreading. The Angels faced an impossible choice: unleash a bloody public war that would bring massive police attention, or attempt something they rarely did: negotiate. Their hesitation became another victory for Turl, whose organization interpreted the lack of immediate retaliation as proof that the Angels were weaker than everyone believed. Within weeks, other dealers began testing boundaries. Some stopped paying full tribute amounts. Others delayed payments. A few bold ones stopped paying entirely, claiming they were following Turl's example. The Angels' business model was under existential threat. Their entire power structure depended on universal acknowledgement of their authority, symbolized by that 10% tax. Every week Turl operated without paying. Every new dealer who joined his rebellion, their aura of invincibility diminished. For nearly 3 decades, the Angels had maintained control through a simple principle: challenge us and die. Turl had challenged them and not only survived, but thrived. This created a crisis of confidence that rippled through Quebec's entire criminal ecosystem. Law enforcement watching from the sidelines recognized they were witnessing something unprecedented. The most stable criminal power structure in Canadian history was being dismantled by a 27-year-old with no formal criminal education and a small crew of equally young associates. But challenging the Angels was only the beginning. To survive what was coming, Turl Turl would need to demonstrate that his organization could protect its people and punish its enemies more effectively than the established order. That would require a level of strategic violence that would shock even veteran law enforcement officers. The investigation intensifies. By mid-2023, police knew they were dealing with something unprecedented. The Quebec Provincial Police launched one of their largest organized crime investigations in years, codenamed Operation Phantom. Detective Sergeant Paul Martineau, who led the initial investigation, described the challenge. We had protocols for investigating traditional organized crime, known meeting places, established hierarchies, predictable patterns. The Blood Family Mafia operated like nothing we'd encountered before. The first problem was surveillance. Traditional criminal organizations had clubhouses, regular hangouts, predictable routines. Turl's people met in different locations every time, communicating through encrypted gaming platforms and cryptocurrency transactions that left minimal digital footprints. The second problem was informants. Law enforcement relies heavily on inside sources, criminals willing to provide information in exchange for reduced sentences or protection. But the Blood Family Mafia's recruitment strategy made traditional informant development nearly impossible. They recruited young people with no prior criminal records, offering them immediate profit and advancement. These weren't career criminals looking to reduce sentences. They were newcomers with everything to gain and nothing to lose by staying loyal. A veteran organized crime detective explained the frustration. Usually we can flip someone because they're facing serious time for previous crimes. These kids were clean, no priors, no leverage, and they were making more money than they'd ever seen in their lives. Why would they talk to us? The third challenge was the violence itself. Crime scenes showed evidence of methodical planning rather than spontaneous brutality. These weren't crimes of passion, but calculated psychological warfare designed to send specific messages throughout the criminal ecosystem. Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic psychologist who consulted on multiple cases, noted, "The BFM understood something fundamental about fear. It's not just about what happens to you. It's about what might happen." Each incident was designed to maximize terror in whoever discovered the evidence or heard about it later. What truly alarmed investigators wasn't just the clinical nature of the violence, but the operational security surrounding it. No fingerprints, no DNA evidence, no witnesses willing to talk. The perpetrators moved like professionals, using counter-surveillance techniques that suggested military or intelligence training. Police began intercepting communications that painted a disturbing picture. Turl's organization operated with cell structures similar to terrorist organizations. Individual members knew only their immediate contacts, not the broader network. Orders came down through encrypted channels, often using code words that changed regularly. More concerning was their intelligence capability. The Blood Family Mafia seemed to know about police movements before officers did. Raids on suspected safe houses found empty locations recently abandoned. Surveillance operations were countered by the target's sudden disappearance from monitored areas. They had sources inside law enforcement, admitted a senior investigator who requested anonymity. Not necessarily corrupt officers, but access to information that let them stay ahead of our operations. Maybe someone dating a dispatcher or a family member working civilian support. They understood how we worked and planned accordingly. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, financial analysis. While Turl's organization avoided traditional banking, they still needed to move money. Cryptocurrency transactions, while more anonymous than bank transfers, still leave digital trails for investigators who know where to look. Financial crimes specialist detective Louise Gagnon spent months mapping cryptocurrency flows connected to known Blood Family Mafia activities. The pattern that emerged was sophisticated, but not perfect. Large amounts moving through multiple digital wallets before being converted to cash at Bitcoin ATMs across Quebec City. They were smart, Gagnon explained, but they were also greedy. The amounts were too large to hide completely. We started identifying the conversion points and working backward. By late 2023, police had identified most of the Blood Family Mafia's core membership and several of their operational safe houses. But every time they moved to make arrests, targets had vanished hours earlier. Someone was providing advance warning. the investigation revealed something that worried authorities beyond the immediate criminal activity. Turl had created a new model of organized crime that was significantly harder to investigate than traditional structures. Decentralized leadership, encrypted communications, minimal physical infrastructure, recruitment from non-traditional criminal populations. This is the future of organized crime, warned Inspector Claude Dubois in an internal briefing. Borderless, digitally native, and incredibly difficult to disrupt through traditional enforcement methods. If other criminals adopt these techniques, we'll need to completely rethink our approach.
The international element. In July 2023, as arrest warrants were issued for Dave Turl and his second-in-command, Ruben Dennis, both men had already vanished without a trace. What investigators initially assumed was a temporary hideout strategy soon revealed itself as something far more sophisticated. Most fugitives either go completely silent or make mistakes trying to maintain contact with their organizations. Turl somehow managed to continue directing operations with military-grade precision while constantly moving across continents. Cell phone data analysis revealed an astonishing pattern of movement. Portugal first, where he spent several weeks establishing new identities and financial channels. Then Morocco, using North Africa as a staging ground for European operations. Greece followed, then Spain, and eventually Italy, where he would establish his longest-term operational base. At no point did Turl use his real identity or established financial channels. He moved like a ghost, using forged documents, cryptocurrency transactions, and burner phones that frustrated international law enforcement at every turn. More impressive than his evasion techniques was Turl's continued operational control over the Blood Family Mafia. Criminal organizations typically collapse without their leader's physical presence. Personal relationships and face-to-face intimidation are usually essential for maintaining discipline and loyalty. The Blood Family Mafia didn't just survive Turl's absence, it expanded. A former RCMP intelligence officer described the unprecedented situation. He was texting operational orders from across the Atlantic, and his people were executing them within hours. We'd intercept fragments of communications showing he was micromanaging, getting everything from territorial disputes to specific operations. This wasn't general guidance. It was hands-on leadership from thousands of miles away. Attacks on Hells Angels properties continued with precise timing. Drug shipments arrived on schedule. Money flowed through increasingly complex laundering operations, all orchestrated by a man who officially didn't exist anywhere in the world. European law enforcement agencies found themselves dealing with a criminal they couldn't locate using traditional methods. Interpol issued a red notice, placing Turl on their most wanted list with global distribution. The first confirmed sighting came from a luxury apartment building in Lisbon. Surveillance footage captured someone matching Turl's description, but facial recognition software couldn't provide definitive confirmation due to apparent cosmetic changes. By the time local authorities obtained warrants and raided the location, he had vanished, leaving only wiped electronics and scattered SIM cards. Inspector Carlos Santos of the Portuguese Judicial Police described the scene. Professional-level operational security. Everything wiped, burned, or destroyed. No fingerprints, no DNA, no useful evidence. Whoever taught him tradecraft knew what they were doing. The next trace emerged from Morocco, where border officials later identified passport documentation that had been used by Turl under an alias. The documents were high-quality forgeries that had passed initial screening. Only retrospective analysis revealed their fraudulent nature. This pattern continued across multiple countries. Brief appearances, sophisticated false identities, and rapid movement that stayed ahead of international coordination efforts. Each sighting provided just enough information to confirm he was moving, but never enough to predict where he would appear next. What puzzled investigators most was how Turl maintained his criminal empire while living as an international fugitive. Traditional organized crime depends on physical presence, personal relationships, and the ability to demonstrate power through direct action. Turl had created something different. A criminal organization that functioned like a modern corporation, with remote leadership, secure communications, and decentralized operations. Intelligence gathered after his eventual capture would reveal the sophistication of his remote command structure. He used a rotation of burner phones,
each active for only days before being discarded. Encrypted messaging apps with military-grade security protocols. A complex system of code words and proxies that made intercepted communications nearly impossible to decrypt. Most remarkably, he had established redundant communication channels, ensuring that if one system was compromised, others remained viable. He created multiple layers of trusted intermediaries who could relay orders without knowing the broader operational context. The February 2024 coordinated raids across Quebec highlighted the challenge law enforcement faced. While authorities successfully arrested 18 Blood Family Mafia members and seized significant assets, the organization's core infrastructure remained intact. Within weeks, operations had resumed under Turl's continued remote. Among Dennis's possessions were notebooks with coded references to locations across southern Europe, including specific districts in Rome. Financial records showing cryptocurrency transactions from multiple countries. Most importantly, communication logs that revealed the timing and frequency of contact with the missing leader. Even as law enforcement tightened the net around him, Turl maintained his operational rhythm. Some intelligence analysts speculated he could have continued indefinitely, establishing permanent exile while running his criminal empire remotely. What ultimately led to his capture wasn't superior police work, but an apparent betrayal from within his own organization. Someone, either lured by the $250,000 reward or seeking immunity from prosecution, provided specific coordinates that led directly to his Roman hideout.
The capture and global impact. What followed Dennis's arrest was a carefully orchestrated international operation involving Canadian authorities, Interpol, and Italian law enforcement. For weeks, they monitored potential locations in and around Rome, analyzed utility usage patterns, and deployed surveillance teams across the city's outskirts. The breakthrough came through an unexpected channel, a cryptic message sent to a Quebec police contact containing only GPS coordinates and the phrase, "He's tired of moving." Whether this intelligence came from a disgruntled Blood Family Mafia insider seeking the $250,000 reward, or someone negotiating immunity in exchange for information, remains classified. But the intelligence proved accurate. In the pre-dawn hours of March 27, 2025, Italian Carabinieri tactical units surrounded a private villa in the hills outside Rome. They expected resistance, perhaps even a firefight, given Turl's reputation and resources. Instead, they found him standing calmly in the hallway, barefoot, and apparently expecting them. The man who had eluded international authorities for nearly 2 years surrendered without incident. Captain Marco Benedetti, who led the arrest operation, described the scene. He was completely composed. No weapons, no attempt to flee or resist. He just stood there like he had been waiting for us. Very polite, actually. Asked if he could put on shoes before we transported him. Inside the villa, investigators discovered the infrastructure of Turl's mobile criminal empire. 6 burner phones in various stages of use and disposal. Multiple SIM cards from different European countries. Forged documents bearing his image but different names and nationalities. Encrypted USB drives that would later reveal the scope of his international operations. Most telling were handwritten ledgers detailing drug shipments, territorial assignments, and financial transactions across 2 continents. Everything was labeled, coded, and organized with military precision. The technology was sophisticated, but what struck investigators most was the meticulous record-keeping that suggested someone planning for a much longer exile. The capture made international headlines, not just because of the manhunt's scope, but because of what Turl's success revealed about modern criminal organizations. How had someone so young, with no formal training in counterintelligence or international operations, managed to evade a multinational law enforcement effort for nearly 2 years while continuing to manage a criminal enterprise? More concerning for authorities worldwide was what Turl's methods represented, a blueprint for future criminal organizations that other ambitious criminals would inevitably study and improve upon. Dr. Antonio Marquez, a criminology professor at the University of Rome who studies transnational organized crime, observed, Turl demonstrated that, in the digital age, traditional concepts of criminal territory are obsolete. His organization operated without regard for national borders, using technology to maintain control across vast distances. This is not just the future of organized crime, it's the present. The investigation into Turl's European operations revealed connections to criminal networks in at least 7 countries. Not formal partnerships, but business relationships facilitated by the same technologies that allowed him to manage his Quebec operations remotely. He had essentially created a criminal consulting business, offering strategic advice and operational support to like-minded organizations. Italian financial investigators tracking the money flows discovered that Turl's exile had been extremely profitable. Rather than simply hiding and spending accumulated wealth, he had used his reputation and expertise to generate new revenue streams. European criminals were paying for access to his methods, his contacts, and his strategic thinking. The implications alarmed law enforcement agencies across multiple continents. Turl hadn't just fled prosecution. He had transformed himself into an international criminal educator, spreading sophisticated techniques to organizations that had previously operated with more primitive methods. Inspector Sarah Williams of Interpol's Organized Crime Division explained the broader concerns. Traditional criminal organizations were inherently limited by geography and culture. Their methods didn't translate well across borders. Turl created something different. A standardized, scalable model that could work anywhere there's internet access and corrupt officials willing to provide false documents. Even more troubling was evidence that Turl had been planning for permanent exile, not temporary hiding. The villa outside Rome was just one of several properties he had acquired across Europe. Financial records showed ongoing rent payments for apartments in 3 other countries, suggesting a network of safe houses that could have sustained him indefinitely. His capture hadn't been the result of superior investigation, but apparent betrayal from within his own organization. Without that inside information, law enforcement officials privately admitted he might never have been caught. As Turl awaits legal proceedings in Italy's high-security Regina Coeli prison, his time as an international fugitive has already inspired copycat operations. Intelligence agencies report that criminal organizations in multiple countries are adopting similar remote management techniques, encrypted communication protocols, and international mobility strategies. The young man who started by refusing to pay a street tax to Quebec bikers had accidentally created a new paradigm for transnational organized crime. His methods are being studied not just by law enforcement, but by criminal organizations seeking to modernize their own operations. What began as a local territorial dispute in Quebec City had evolved into an international concern that continues to influence criminal enterprises worldwide. The questions Turl's success raised about traditional law enforcement methods, border security, and international cooperation remain largely unanswered. And in maximum security prisons across Canada, established criminal leaders are quietly studying news reports about Dave Turl's techniques, wondering if an old dog can indeed learn new tricks from a young criminal genius who redefined what it means to be untouchable in the modern world.